You never expect to find a former software engineer driving an auto rickshaw through the buzzing streets of Bengaluru. But when one passenger did, a single question unlocked a hidden tale of sacrifice, love, and a fall that would later rise higher than ever imagined. This is a story of quiet resilience, stunning choices, and a destiny waiting just around the corner. Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond. The morning rush in Bengaluru was unforgiving as ever blaring horns, rickshaws zigzagging between buses, and the endless symphony of impatient commuters. But nestled in this chaos was a man who navigated the lanes with practiced ease and calm. He wore a plain navy shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a faint stubble on his chin, and eyes that looked like they once dreamt far bigger dreams. Inside his rickshaw, behind the driver's seat, hung a laminated ID card. It had faded from years of sun exposure, but the words were still legible. Raghav Iyer, Senior Software Engineer, VMS Solutions Private Ltd. The passenger, a corporate man in polished shoes, noticed it during a red light pause and leaned forward. "Hey! Were you really an IT guy?" Raghav glanced at him through the rearview mirror, a half-smile forming on his lips. "Yeah. I used to write code for apps you probably still use." The passenger chuckled, a bit awkwardly. "And now, this?" Raghav didn't respond with bitterness. Instead, he nodded. "Yes. Now this." But it wasn't always this way. Just 2 years ago, Raghav lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Whitefield, working for one of India's top mid-sized tech firms. He had climbed the ranks with grit and passion. Known for mentoring junior developers and solving bugs no one else could touch, Raghav was the kind of employee companies fought to keep. His wife, Anjali, was a schoolteacher. Together, they lived a modest but content life. Their joy was doubled when Raghav's mother moved in with them after retiring from her village job. Life, in its quiet way, felt full. Until it didn't. It started with fatigue. Then back pain. Then a terrifying diagnosis: his mother had multiple myeloma, a form of blood cancer. Private hospitals demanded quick decisions and even quicker money. The insurance coverage, unfortunately, was limited. And government hospitals had long queues and limited chemo access. Raghav didn't hesitate. He sold his mutual funds, borrowed from friends, and maxed out his credit cards. But the bills came faster than the money. Just when things couldn't get worse, they did. His company underwent massive restructuring during an acquisition. Entire teams were laid off overnight. Raghav, though highly respected, had no seniority left to shield him. He was given a 3-week severance. That was it. The day he packed up his desk, he stared at the screensaver on his work monitor. A picture of him, his wife, and his mom smiling during Diwali. That smile haunted him as he walked out into the rain. He applied for job after job. But the market was tight, and his age, pushing 40, was a barrier in a sea of younger, cheaper talent. 3 months passed. Then 5. And the hospital bills piled up. One evening, sitting at a chai stall, he watched a rickshaw driver count his notes after a long shift. "How much do you make in a day?" Raghav asked. "Depends on the day. 800 Indian rupees to 1,200 Indian rupees. Some days more." It wasn't much. But it was honest. And immediate. That night, Raghav sold his old sedan to a second-hand dealer. He used the money as a down payment for a used rickshaw. He didn't tell Anjali right away, only said, "Trust me for a little longer." The next morning, he began his first shift at 6 a.m. The first few weeks were brutal. The heat, the angry commuters, the aching back. But Raghav didn't complain. He kept a water bottle, a pack of mints, and a soft smile ready for every passenger. Many ignored him. Some judged. A few asked questions. And those who did always saw something different in him. A passenger once left a pen drive in his back seat. Raghav tracked her down 2 suburbs away and returned it. Another time, an elderly man didn't have change. Raghav waved it off. "Some debts are blessings," he said.
But the job wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. He wasn't begging. He wasn't stealing. He was earning every rupee with integrity. He dropped his mother at the hospital every week. Held her hand through chemo. Told her stories on the ride home to distract her from the pain. He smiled when she was awake. He cried in silence when she slept. He hid the rickshaw keys from her for months. Until one day she saw grease on his fingers. "Raghav, why do your hands look like your grandfather's now?" He only smiled. "Because I'm your son."
At night, when the city quieted down, Raghav would sit on the rooftop and look at the skyline at the offices he once worked in and whisper, one day,
"I'll come back. But for now, this is where I'm needed."
As the signal turned green, the corporate passenger adjusted his seat, still. It had been 3 months since Raghav started driving the rickshaw full-time, and word had quietly spread in his neighborhood.
Some people respected him more.
Others whispered behind his back. But the person who had changed the most was Anjali. At first, she was shocked. A part of her couldn't understand why her once proud husband, a man who had built his life in front of a glowing monitor and logic trees, would now spend his days navigating potholes and honking for fares. She had stood in the kitchen one night, holding his stained shirt, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me you were doing this?" she asked.
Raghav wiped sweat from his forehead, still smelling of diesel. "Because I knew it would hurt you."
But it was either this or watching your mother-in-law suffer in silence.
Anjali's silence spoke volumes that night.
But the next morning, she handed him a tiffin box with hot rotis and sabzi.
"I packed your favorite. You'll need the strength."
Love has strange ways of revealing itself, not always through words, but through quiet gestures in the storm. One Saturday, as Raghav pulled over near Cubbon Park to eat his lunch, a boy came running up to his rickshaw window. Dirty-faced, barely 10, with hopeful eyes.
"Uncle, can you help me find my Amma?
She sells flowers near the temple, but I lost her."
Raghav didn't think twice.
He closed his tiffin, told the boy to hop in, and began driving slowly around the area. He asked vendors, other kids, temple guards, until finally, outside a rundown corner of the Hanuman temple, a frail woman gasped and rushed toward the rickshaw.
"Apu! My Apu," she cried.
The boy leapt into her arms, both sobbing. Raghav simply smiled, started his engine to leave, but she ran after him.
"Wait.
I have no money, but I can give you marigolds, uncle." He shook his head. "You already gave me something more precious," he said.
"Your smile." Later that evening, Raghav recounted the incident to Anjali as they sat sipping watery tea.
She stared at him, this man she married, the man who once sat in boardrooms and now chased lost children for free. "You've changed," she said softly. "No," he replied. "The world changed me. I just decided how I'd respond." Despite everything, Raghav never let his shoulders droop. But deep inside, he missed coding. Missed the language of loops, of solving impossible errors, of celebrating when a piece of software finally worked. One rainy Tuesday, as he waited for passengers under the flyover, a young woman in formal clothes flagged him down, drenched from the downpour. "MG Road, please," she said, shivering slightly. Raghav handed her a clean towel from the back. "Dry off." "No extra charge," he smiled. She laughed. "Thanks. You're different from other drivers." They made small talk on the way, weather, traffic, the rising price of onions. But as they neared MG Road, her phone rang. She answered, sounding frustrated. "Yes, sir, I know the file's corrupted. I've been trying to fix it all morning." There was a pause. Her face fell. "I understand. I'll email my resignation if it can't be recovered. I'm sorry." She hung up, wiping her eyes. Raghav glanced in the mirror. "If it's a corrupted Excel macro file, I might be able to fix it. I used to work in IT." She looked stunned. "Seriously?" He parked the rickshaw, pulled out his phone. "Forward it to me." Within 10 minutes, he had written a tiny script, restored the file version, and handed it back. She stared at him like he was a ghost. "Who are you?" He laughed. "Just a guy with a past and a purpose." The next day, he received a message, "You saved my job. I told my boss about you. He wants to talk. Says he could use a problem solver like you." Raghav didn't know what to say. He didn't jump or scream or cry. He just looked up at the sky, his hands still blackened by rickshaw grease, and whispered to no one in particular, "I'm not done yet." The streets of Bengaluru hummed with their usual energy. But inside one auto rickshaw rolled not just a driver but a man stitched together with resilience, sacrifice, and hope that hadn't been extinguished, only buried, waiting for the right moment to rise again. 2 days after fixing the corrupted file for the young executive, Raghav found himself standing in the lobby of a glass-fronted building that mirrored the sky, one of those modern tech hubs he once walked through in polished shoes and crisp shirts. Now, he wore a borrowed shirt, a neatly ironed pair of trousers, and shoes that had seen better days but had been polished until they almost shone. He had been invited, not for an interview, but a conversation. The executive he helped, Mira, had insisted her boss meet him. "This isn't a handout," she had told him. "It's a second chance. You've earned it." The receptionist glanced up. "Mr. Raghav Iyer?" He nodded nervously. "You can go in. CEO's expecting you." As Raghav walked through the hallway, memories overwhelmed him, those endless meetings, the glow of monitors, coffee breaks with teammates, late nights debugging code that refused to cooperate. He had once belonged to this world. Then lost it. Now, fate had brought him full circle. He entered a room with floor-to-ceiling windows. A tall man in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, extended a hand. "I'm Arvind Menon. Mira told me what you did. Impressive under any circumstances, but especially from the driver's seat of a rickshaw." Raghav shook his hand, a humble smile on his lips. "Sir, I didn't think anyone would take a man like me seriously anymore." Arvind gestured for him to sit. "I take problem solvers seriously. Not titles. And what you did showed character and skill. We need both." He leaned forward. "We're launching a new vertical for mid-sized logistics clients, back-end optimization, database cleanup, app testing. It's raw, scrappy work. But it's the foundation of something much bigger. You in?" Raghav's throat tightened. He thought of his mother's hospital room, the scent of antiseptics and jasmine garlands. He thought of Anjali's tired smile, their quiet dinners, the worn rickshaw keys that had never left his pocket. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady. "But I'd like to keep driving my rickshaw, part-time. Just until my mom finishes treatment. It's stable money. And it reminds me where I came from." Arvind nodded, surprised, but impressed. "Then let's build something honest, Mr. Iyer. Welcome back." As Raghav left the office, something felt lighter in his chest. The world hadn't changed for him. But it had shifted. Subtly, like the first crack of light before sunrise. That evening, when he reached home, he found Anjali waiting at the door with a letter in hand and tears in her eyes. "It's from the hospital," she said, voice trembling. "The latest results." Raghav took the envelope and opened it slowly, heart pounding. After reading the contents, he sank into the nearest chair, hand on his chest, tears rushing uninvited. Remission. The cancer was finally in remission. Their home, once filled with the quiet hum of uncertainty, now rang with the silent echo of answered prayers. That night, they didn't say much. Anjali rested her head on his shoulder as they sat on the small balcony overlooking a narrow alleyway. The rickshaw was parked below, still warm from the day's ride. "You brought her back to us," Anjali whispered. "And now, it feels like life is bringing you back too." Raghav smiled into the sky. "Maybe. I just needed to lose everything to remember what actually matters." The city around them kept rushing, cars, lights, chaos. But inside one tiny home on the third floor of a dusty apartment building, time paused. And in the pause, a family found something worth more than comfort, more than success. They found each other. 6 months later, Raghav's rickshaw was no longer just a vehicle, it had become a mobile classroom, an office on wheels, and a quiet sanctuary where dreams had been broken, stitched back together, and reborn. By day, he worked in Arvind's company, leading a modest but growing team tasked with fixing problems others had given up on. By evening, he drove his rickshaw through familiar neighborhoods, not for money anymore, but for something else: stories. Stories of the city. People. Struggles. Second chances. Raghav had begun to record short interviews with passengers who allowed it, sometimes a widow returning from a temple, sometimes a street artist, sometimes a retired soldier or a runaway teen. He uploaded them to a small YouTube channel he started with Mira's help. Auto Diary, it was called. Raw. Real. Unfiltered. One afternoon, just before the monsoon rains, a young man flagged him down. Drenched, desperate, and carrying a plastic folder that looked like it held all his hopes. "Sir, can you take me to the interview center near Andheri East?" Raghav nodded and started the engine. Along the way, the boy mumbled, "It's my 5th interview this week. I used to work in a call center, then it shut down. I'm tired. My mom's sick. Don't even know why I keep trying." Raghav looked at him through the rearview mirror. The defeat in his eyes was familiar. Painfully familiar. He smiled. "Let me tell you something." And he did. The whole story. No embellishment. About being an IT guy, a rickshaw driver, a caregiver, a husband, a son, a stranger who found his way back home by getting completely lost. The boy listened in stunned silence. By the time they reached the interview center, he wiped his eyes, shook Raghav's hand with both of his, and said, "You're not just a driver. You're proof." Raghav watched him walk into the building with his shoulders straightened, a new fire in his step. He drove off, the city shimmering through the misted windshield. That night, Raghav got home to find his mother preparing food, humming an old lullaby, "Stronger Now." Anjali was sewing a curtain for the front window and smiling like the woman he married, not weighed down by fear anymore. He sat down, leaned back, and closed his eyes. His life was still modest, his clothes still simple. The world still saw him as ordinary. But inside, he was something else now. A man who fell, rose, and chose not to forget the fall. The kind of man the world didn't write headlines about, but whose quiet resilience was changing lives one ride, one story, one soul at a time. And so, if you ever find yourself in Mumbai and a rickshaw pulls over with a sticker on the side that reads Auto Diary, where every ride is a story, get in. You might just ride with a man who reminds you what really matters. This is Storytelling and Beyond, where even a rickshaw ride can take you to unexpected places.